Get started here. Welcome to tonight's City Council regular meeting. This is Tuesday, May 19th, 2020. Again, we apologize for the late start. This is in compliance with the social distancing orders at this time. We hope that this will be on a limited basis, even that maybe this is the last time we have to quite do it that way, but getting everybody on board and set up through Zoom calls, etc., we apologize for starting late. Regardless, we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order.
Mayor, before we begin, I don't think we're live on the YouTube yet. I was looking.
Okay. Abel, do you, or Vanessa, do you show us on YouTube? Okay, we're saying we're live, but refresh the server there, Councilman Manfredi.
Okay, I did. Okay, I don't see it, but maybe other people do.
Okay. We'll keep trying there. All right, that'll take us here. Let's go ahead and invite Pastor Rusty Akers from Community of Hope Church to please give us our invocation, after which we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance from Councilmember Marvin Brown. If you'd all please rise.
Let's pray. Father God, we just want to thank you for another day. God, as the last 10 weeks, Father, we just want to ask you for healing for our world. God, we pray for wisdom tonight from our council. Not only our council here, but our governments around the world as well, God. Father God, show us what you can do. You make good things out of bad, God. You redeem all things. We're asking for that right now today, God. We just ask all this in your name. Amen.
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 Please proceed, Councilmember Brown.
All right, would you please rise? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic that stands one nation under God, liberty and justice.
Thank you. You may be seated. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Pastor Akers. We appreciate it. That'll take us to the roll call, please.
Councilmember Brown?
Here.
Councilwoman Gussie?
Here.
Councilmember Manfredi?
Here.
Councilmember Vidiello?
Here.
Councilmember Wade?
Here.
Vice Mayor Smith?
Here.
Mayor Price?
Here.
Mr. Mayor, we have a quorum.
Great. Thank you very much. That'll take us to the report from the mayor at this time. Very few things. I have some stuff in the works for later this week that I'll report here at the next council meeting. And at the end of it all, spent a whole host of time the last 2 weeks between this council meeting and that on lots and lots and lots of Zoom calls with economic development organizations, as well as the governor's office and Senator Sinema's office, Senator McSally's, and many others regarding this COVID issue. So with that, I'll just go ahead and keep that very brief and short, and we'll move to the report from the city manager. Nothing at this time, city manager. Thank you very much. So that'll take us to item 5, which is the meeting minutes. So we have item 6.9 or 5.1. My apologies. Approval of minutes from the May 5th, 2020 council meeting.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
Are you
Councilman.
not allowing for time from the
Oh,
councilman?
I apologize. We'll go back and do that. I was on a roll. Don't slow me down.
Sorry about that, sir.
Sorry about that. I do want to give council an opportunity to speak, so my apologies. Before we go to item 5, we'll go to council members. Councilmember Wade.
Are you there? Actually, Mr. Mayor, I didn't have a whole lot myself for that, but I was hoping that the other council members would have an opportunity to speak. So,
Well, I do have something, Mr. Mayor.
Please, Councilmember Brown.
Well, if Councilor Lee wants to go first.
I'm done.
Oh, go ahead,
You
Councilmember.
done?
Yes, sir.
All right. Yes. Well, I have the pleasure of attending May 7th meeting at our Budget, Finance, and Economic Development meeting down at the League office. We dealt with House Bill 2604, which passed the House, has not been considered in the Senate, and probably will not be till next year. But we do plan to take it up September 8th annual meeting in Glendale. The bill essentially is the valid identification, consular identification card, and that is that this state or any public subdivision of this state shall accept a consular identification card that is issued by a foreign government as a valid form of identification. If that foreign government uses biometric identification, and that, of course, would mean fingerprinting or retina scans. So that's the form of identification for foreigners in this country, as well as United States citizens in other countries. That's essentially it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Brown. Appreciate the report. Anyone else at this time like to report? Yes, Councilwoman Gussie.
2 weeks ago, I had an opportunity to attend a Maricopa's event. This was a barbecue, and we also had an opportunity to make some flags out of wood material that were donated to all the Maricopa Police Departments and the Fire Department, also to the auction department. One of the reasons why we had this event, it was a barbecue fundraiser, donations only, to help the local businesses, especially the veteran-owned businesses that are being affected by this COVID-19 issue. We're going to do a repeat on Saturday, May 23rd, which is this Saturday. They will be doing the same thing again at the same location right there in front of the Maricopa Library. We're not using the library, but we're using the empty lot. And we're hoping to fundraise some more money to help those veteran-owned businesses that have been affected by this COVID-19. Also, I had an opportunity yesterday to attend a meeting where Congressman O'Halloran's office presented a $1,000 check to the Maricopa Veterans Care Center. And this $1,000 check came out of Congressman O'Halloran's pocket. It was not his discretionary funds, it was his personal funds. So it was a great donation by Congressman O'Halloran. And that's the only thing I had to report.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Yes, Councilmember Manfredi.
Can't hear you.
Can't hear you, Councilmember. Councilmember Manfredi, I can't hear you. Councilmember Manfredi, I still can't hear you.
Sorry, I was not on the mute or whatever. We're still not live on our YouTube channel, and I've gotten 2 text messages from people saying, I can't watch. So, I don't know if we're going to fix it or not.
Okay.
Abel is looking at it right now. We are live on our Legistar page, that first link that's on our agenda,
Okay.
which is on our website.
Yeah, but it's not on the YouTube. Yeah,
Right.
it's not on the YouTube that we told people to go to. But, okay.
All right, thank you. Vice Mayor Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. So I attended the Pinell Partnership Economic Development Committee meeting that was held today via Zoom, and some really interesting information that I think might help folks in the community. The Pinell County Workforce Development Agency has 2 new programs that they're excited about. The first one is for adult displaced worker program, and so for those adults that have been released from their jobs or currently on hold from their jobs, this might be a place to go and look and find out what they offer, and you can simply find out what benefits they offer for this program by contacting the Pinell County Workforce Development Agency. They also have a program that's new for business assistance. They call it the Business Assistance Center. And so businesses are also able to call the Pinell County Workforce Development Agency. And I thought those were 2 pretty good programs that might be of benefit to our residents. And that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Mayor.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Wade.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I completely forgot, and I'm sorry I did this. Thursday is the pseudo graduation event for Maricopa High School, where the students will be in a caravan going to receive their diplomas. And so that's it's going to be a pretty nice activity. They'll be able to make sure they have their cap and gowns because they'll be able to take a photo at the time as well. But again, that's Thursday the 21st, and the graduations. And then there are a group of moms that have been out in the community trying to get items, funds for a raffle, if you will. They have over 100 items to raffle, and giving the opportunity for the kids to be able to do this, for Maricopa High School students to be able to, and it ranges anywhere from 20% off at Denny's to $50 gift cards, $100 or $25 gift cards. And it's just a nice way of saying to the students, you know, we care, we love you, and we wish you the best. So just want to make sure that I mention that, particularly those moms. They've been working hard.
Great, thank you very much. Yes, Councilmember Vidiello.
Can't hear you.
Councilmember Vidiello, we can't hear you.
How's that?
Much better, thank you.
Sorry. So I just was saying that I want to thank the council for doing everything they've done over the last 8 weeks. We really pulled together as a team and showed our city that we can work together and work hard together and get through tough times. And then as for the people and the citizens and the residents of Maricopa, thank you for getting together and really helping these restaurants out. We could have had a lot of closures come the next couple of weeks. And I really do want to thank the people of Maricopa for supporting everybody out there, all our restaurants, all our places that they were able to, you know, help support and purchase something. So thank you, Maricopa. And this is why I love this great city. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember. Just as a update here, I've just been told that while we were not live for a few minutes on YouTube, we are now. So you should be able to see us on YouTube, and if for some reason that should go off again, please go to maricopa-az.gov website, go to agendas, and then over to the watch the video live link, and you should be able to access it from there. So thank you. Okay, Council, thank you very much for your reports. That'll take us on to item 5, which is the meeting minutes. This is the approval of the May 5th, 2020 minutes. Council, any questions on these minutes? Seeing none, can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Have a
Move
motion.
approval?
So I have a motion from Councilmember Wade. Would that be a second, Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Thank you. So I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the past meeting minutes? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much. That'll take us to consent agenda. Council, do you have any questions on consent before we move towards a motion? Seeing none, can I accept a motion for consent agenda, please?
So moved.
We have a motion from Councilwoman Gussie. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Councilman Vidiello. Is there any further discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? That
Aye.
motion carries. And that takes us to items 7.1, 7.2. I'll turn the time, before we get to 7.1, Councilman Manfredi. Did you want a few seconds here, Councilman Manfredi, before we get to item 7.1?
Yeah. For 7.1 and 7.2, I've been advised by the city attorney that it probably makes sense for me to recuse myself, although I don't really believe there's a conflict because we're talking about a behavior of a council member. I'm still going to go ahead and recuse myself from this, so I'm going to go ahead and leave the meeting, and then you guys can continue.
Okay.
But since we have nothing else afterwards, I don't think I need to come back. I don't think, right?
That would be
Or do I have
correct.
to come back for the cancellation? For the closing.
I don't believe so. I believe he's already marked present. Yeah, you're good to go.
All right, so I don't need to be back for adjournment. Thank you so much for your help. Thanks so much for meeting today. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman Manfredi. That'll take us to item 7.1. The mayor and city council shall discuss and possibly take action on determining whether Councilwoman Julia Gussie violated the code of ethics as set forth in Chapter 2, Article 7 of the Maricopa City Code as alleged in the ethics violation formal complaint dated April 16th, 2020. This is for discussion and action. Please note that no public comment will be received during the agenda item except for comments from and questions directed to the complainant. So this is how this will work at this point. I want to make sure that we've read obviously read the agenda item. I want to invite Mr. Scott Bartle to come forward and give a statement or be available to ask questions by the council. At which point you'll give the time to Councilwoman Gussie to make a statement, and then council, you have the ability to deliberate at that point. Again, in this particular case, you sit as judges, and so as such, your job is to listen to the facts and take all of the information presented before you and make a decision. And if there's a decision that should warrant item 7.2, which is that there is some guilt or some reason to go towards sanctions, then we'd move to item 7.2. If we do not reach that verdict through 7.1, then we will not need to go to 7.2, and we would simply close that item out. So with that, is there any questions before we proceed? Okay, Mr. Bartle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, city staff. I do not want to be here tonight. I hope Councilmember Gussie's behavior would have been policed by the city council without my intervention. But here we are. Please understand I am the complainant, but this is not about me, and this is not about my company. This is about a member of your esteemed council whose actions are unbecoming and make your entire governing body and the city look bad. If you take the names out of the emails and the personalities that go with them and submit this complaint to the other 90 city and town councils in our great state of Arizona, I would bet my bottom dollar all 90 sets of your colleagues would overwhelmingly agree that the respondent violated the Code of Ethics. There are many other instances of Councilmember Gussie's behavior violating this Code of Ethics at my expense, and I hope you hold her accountable and mitigate the chance of history repeating itself. You have your get-out-of-jail-free card if you choose to use it, but your constituents elected you for your leadership and your judgment. You cannot graze in some manufactured gray area and make everyone happy. You have two choices and two choices only. You condemn Councilmember Gussie's inappropriate behavior, or you condone it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bartle. Anyone have questions for Mr. Bartle at this time? If you'll please stick around in case there are people that don't have questions here right at the moment, but certainly want to go to anyone that might have questions for Mr. Bartle at this time. Okay, seeing none, I'll turn the time over to Councilwoman Gussie.
Thank you, Mayor. I take offense in Mr. Bartle's complaint and see this as an individual taking advantage of a city-sanctioned platform to defame my character. The outside attorney hired to conduct this investigation will end up costing the city anywhere between $5,000 to $10,000. It was mentioned earlier this week that the food bank is in great need of money. I can only imagine what those $5,000 to $10,000 would have meant to that food bank if we would have chosen to give it to the food bank instead of paying for these allegations, these false allegations, for an attorney to defend me and this council. I asked Mr. Bartle a simple question. Within the email exchanged, I mentioned to Mr. Bartle that I felt comfortable enough after 10 years of friendship to ask him that question. I would have never imagined that he would have taken such offense to my question. My question was directed as a sincere concern for the public welfare. Within the exchange, I even apologized to him in advance if this was brought to me as fake news. Instead, Mr. Bartle chose to berate me in his email exchange. As a citizen of this community, I have every right to be concerned about who is working within our community. On a city business trip to the International Council of Shopping Centers with Mayor Price informed me that we were there to vet companies just as much as they were there to vet us. Per Mayor Price's own words, we are to interview businesses and build relationships and hopefully gain future partnerships. I have been speaking to local businesses regarding their culture and hiring practices for years. This is not the first time that I have talked to a local business owner regarding their hiring practices. In working with a veteran nonprofit during a time frame when my brothers and sisters in uniform were returning home and committing suicide due to the lack of jobs, I was tasked to speak to all businesses regarding their hiring practices and their culture. I built a database of employers that allot for veteran hiring preference points. As a side note, the only business in the local area that actually allows for veteran hiring preference points is the Ak-Chin Indian community. Just a few months ago, I had a conversation with Global Water regarding their discount practices. That is their business. They are in the water business. But I asked them about their discount practices for deployed veterans, and which they are going to honor. Earlier this month, I had a conversation with the president of Orbital regarding the services available during the pandemic and their internet stability in an era where so many of us have been forced to work from home. This is their practice. They are in the business of selling the internet. If anyone has doubts regarding my conduct, please feel free to ask any one of these individuals if they felt threatened or if they took offense when I asked them questions regarding the betterment and welfare of our Maricopa community. In the communication with Mr. Bartle, I treated him with respect. I thought I ended this conversation over a year and a half ago. I was ignorant to believe that I had any friendship with Mr. Bartle. In regards to the abuse of power within this email exchange in question, you will see from the memorandum from the attorney that he has found me exonerated of any of these accusations. What you referred to as, what did you refer to it as? The free ticket out of jail. This city purchased the full page ad, so I had no power and I had no influence. This decision and all decisions going forward regarding marketing funds have been and will continue to be made by city staff. In regards to favoritism within this email exchange in question, you will read once again within the findings that I have been exonerated of these accusations. I have questioned favoritism and inequality of marketing funds. Marketing and advertising public records will show that this year alone, in Maricopa was paid $24,985, while their competitor, Maricopa Monitor, was paid $10,459. Mr. Bartle's perceived notion that I have powers or influence, those are false accusations. You will read once again within the findings that I have been exonerated of those accusations. There is no merit on any of these accusations. And I repeat myself, Mr. Bartle is taking advantage of a city-sanctioned platform to defame my character. I am the voice of many constituents, and I was elected to represent them. In the last election that I ran, I surpassed all Maricopa records and received more votes, 6,826 votes to be exact, more votes than the mayor who ran unopposed, and I defeated an incumbent by thousands of votes, all while battling false accusations from two former councilmen who formed a political pact to defeat me. From your act, I have received dozens of messages of encouragement and support, asking me to fight these false accusations. This is defamation of character and a smear campaign. We, the city, is doing this community an injustice by entertaining these false accusations. What for the next person who brings ridiculous accusations because they didn't care for a word I use to describe his actions and disagrees with the English vernacular? Or say they didn't care for the color of my skin or the fact that I'm a proud product of Mexican immigrants? Or say they didn't care for the fact that I served my country honorably and insulted my service because for whatever reasons, they didn't have what it took to serve our country? Or say that a narcissistic or misogynistic individual who believes women have no place on this city council brought accusations against me or any other person here? Respect the diversity that you see before you. Do not allow this individual to smear my name any further. Accept this legal finding paid for by this community, by our tax dollars, as, how did you put it? As my ticket to get out of jail free. That's what you put it. But this memorandum has exonerated me. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any questions for Councilmember Gussie at this time? Council? No questions at this time. Okay, Council, that opens it up at this moment for deliberations. If any of you decide to have additional questions or questions come up, please just get my attention. We can have any of the individuals, Mr. Bartle or Councilwoman Gussie, to answer those. But again, the time and platform is yours for discussion. Turn it over to you, Council.
Mayor, may I ask
Yes.
a little other question, please?
Yeah, Councilmember Vidiello, please proceed.
Mr. Bartle, I'd like to know, did you read the ethics code
as it's written, I'd like to know if you've read that.
Mr. Bartle, would you please come forward? Were you able to hear the question?
Yeah, Councilman, with all due respect, I would not have filed a complaint had I not read the ethics code. So I understand I understand that Councilmember Gussie, who clearly in her eyes did nothing wrong, but I disagree with that notion. And by the way, you don't need to yell at me, Councilmember Gussie, okay? Also, it is not the job of a Mesa lawyer to exonerate Mrs. Gussie in her actions. It is the job of you guys, the city council, to make that decision.
So, Scott, so you do agree you've read it. So you do know that the way it was written, the intent of it to be written, the way it was written, is for one council member having an issue with another council member, not a third party coming out who can, any given time, anybody throw an ethics violation for any reason against any one of us for any reason that they feel is unethical. So that's why when I ask the question, I'm not trying to be sarcastic or I'm just belittling you. I'm trying to just ask you, if that was the intent, how do you feel that you're able to come as a citizen to stand before and post these allegations against any council member? Let's put it that way. That's really where I'm getting at.
Sure, and thank you for the question. I find it hard to believe that if we did not follow the city code and the process that the city laid out, I would be standing here before you today. There are many injunctions, like when I filed the complaint, that it would have been sent back and said, thank you, but you do not have the ability to file this complaint. It is only for council members to file against each other. Certainly would not expect the city, and I was dumbfounded that there would be an external investigation. I'm sorry that happened. I thought this would be pretty simple because this is just about Mrs. Gussie's emails. So all the judgment aside, it's not a he said, she said, I'm not defaming anybody's character. Here are the emails, okay? So if at this stage of the game, after everything that's gone on and all the resources that's been expended, that there's some question about the validity of the complaint being filed itself, I mean, you guys have to speak to that. Or you have to speak with the city attorney, you have to speak to that. But I would not have filed the complaint had I thought that it was not, the opportunity was not available to constituents and non-council members.
Okay, and then what about the issue of the time frame? It specifically states in the time frame from 90 days to 1 year, and this is obviously first email that when sent out is 2 years later.
Yeah, it was late 2018, so it's been a year and a half now. And as I mentioned at the onset of my comments, I do not want to be here. I do not want to be on the front page of the newspaper. I do not want to be having these conversations with some of these folks who are my friends. It's not good for the city. I would much rather be tucking my baby into bed than being here tonight, with all due respect. So I was hoping that it would, number one, that council would do what they could internally and it wouldn't come to this. And also, my thought process was that if Councilmember Gussie was not going to run for re-election, then let bygones be bygones and move on. But I feel an obligation that to the electorate that, in my view, this behavior is absolutely unacceptable and unbecoming of an elected official in our community, and I think the voters need to see that.
Okay, I appreciate your answers. Thank you very much, Mr. Barrow.
Thank you. Yes, Councilman Wade.
I actually would like to pose this question to both of you. It's indicated that there is a 10-year relationship that was positive and supportive and what have you. What happened to turn that around? Again, from both of you, what is that point that you felt that relationship was no longer one of mutual respect and support till we got to this point here today?
I'm not going to use my mic because I don't want to be accused of yelling, but I don't know. I wish I would be able to tell
The
you.
public probably wants to hear, though.
I wish I would be able to tell you that.
Can you don't have to talk directly into the mic, but if you can just turn it on and re-answer the question.
Councilman Wade, these fights I did not pick. And this is one example, but this is not the only example. There are many other instances. She doesn't know, it's impossible for me to say because, in my view, I've never done anything to harm Councilmember Gussie or deserve the treatment that she has given my business and me. So I cannot speak for her.
Thank you.
I do want to add, though, is that these accusations were also brought up, and they are also all the accusations that you had, the emails, not this one email that happened in 2018. All those accusations you have brought up to the attorney. They were vetted out, and once again, I was exonerated.
No, well, ma'am, I haven't read the whole report, right? I didn't need, I don't, it was just handed to me a few minutes ago, but my guess is the attorney was charged with addressing the complaint and only the complaint. And so don't get too comfortable in that all the other things that you've done are you'd be exonerated for with this.
Okay, so when you say all the other things that I've done, did you mention them to the attorney?
Again, my conversation with the attorney, his job, Mr. Fitzgibbons or Mayor could correct me if I'm wrong, his job was to vet the validity of the complaint. So if there are other things talked about in the context of that complaint, but his first question was, hey, give me some context, then I can't imagine that this is a permanent get out of jail free card, if you will, if that's what you're looking for. But I'm not the attorney, I'm not the counsel, I don't make these decisions.
That's not what I'm looking for. The fact of the matter is that, will this lay to rest your accusations, your false accusations, or will this continue?
I'm
It's a
not
question.
falsely
It's an honest
accusing
question.
anything.
It's an honest question.
It is,
You had brought up the emails, and you had said that I've been continuously, in your eyes, violating the code of ethics. Does this put this to rest, or will this not satisfy
I'll
your
give you an
needs?
example. It depends on counsel's decision, to be honest with
Oh,
you.
okay. All right, that's all.
So, yeah, because after submitting this, when I was doing some research and soliciting some public records requests, I became aware of even more information and more emails that are
Which, by the way, you provided to the attorney, because it's in this report. The
Okay.
additional emails, you provided them. All the public requests, you provided them to the attorney. These are all addressed in this document. And in this document, that attorney that we paid for, of course, we paid for, the city funds paid for, that attorney exonerated me from those accusations. That's all I'm saying. All I'm bringing up is you just mentioned right now that I have numerous in your eyes accusations of improper conduct. But you do recall mentioning those to the attorney.
There are numerous, and tonight, we're discussing only ones that are filed in the complaint.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Council, other questions at this time? Okay. No further discussion? So council, what is your pleasure? How do you wish to proceed?
By that, I'm not quite sure what you mean there, Mr. Mayor.
Well, we have to proceed with this agenda item, so if there's no further discussion, we need to move forward on a decision as to, this is for discussion and action.
Well, Mr. Mayor, then I'd like to make a motion, if it's appropriate at this time, that we close out agenda item 7.1 and move on to agenda item 7.2.
Well, I'll refer to legal here. I don't think we can, because we can't move to agenda item 7.2, which is sanctions, unless there's been a determination of guilt based on the discussion on this particular item.
Right, council, Mr. Mayor, you're correct. At this point, the only thing before council is whether there's reasonable cause to believe Councilwoman Gussie violated the ethics code.
based on what was presented to us in the executive session and before us, and also the complainant had an opportunity to read.
Councilmember Wade, not based on anything presented to you in executive session, just what's presented to you here, the report that's been presented to you.
Understand, and the correction is appreciated. So based on the conversation here today before the complainant and Councilwoman Gussie, I vote that the complaint be set aside, if that is the correct.
Councilmember, if you want to say that there's no reasonable cause to believe that Councilwoman Gussie violated the ethics code, that could be your motion.
Okay. So therefore, my motion would be that, based on this conversation here, that Councilwoman Gussie did not violate the ethics code, and that we move forward.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Vice Mayor Smith.
upon reviewing the information and letting the public know that my biggest concern is whether or not Councilwoman Gussie interfered with the revenue of in Maricopa being my biggest concern. Because when you talk about behavior can be very subjective, and we often know that tone within a written language can be misconstrued, can be perfectly understood. There's a variety of ways to look at that. So my biggest concern was the argument or complaint that Councilwoman Gussie interfered with the revenue from the city advertising jobs that were put out for review, for proposal. And based on the information that I received, that I believe to be factual information, it does appear that in Maricopa has had years where it has been above other media outlets, slightly below other media outlets, and I believe that the data supports the concept that there was no interference from Councilwoman Gussie, and so therefore I find no cause to find that Councilwoman Gussie impacted in the revenue generation for in Maricopa, and I find no reason to put forth a call for complaint or ethics violation.
So do the second.
So does that?
So I will second.
Okay, so there's a second. So there's a motion and a second on the table. I will ask for further discussion here. Mr. Bartle, you wanted to say something there, so I'll give you the opportunity there.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification, two points. One is the advertising element is one of 10 violations as I see it. But even that one, this is not a historical relationship with the city for years and years and years. This is Councilmember Gussie sent an email in response to my solicitation to the city about renewing its ads in a specific product, the new resident guide. That the prior year they had multiple ads, city had multiple ads in. And Councilmember Gussie said, hold on a second, before we give you any advertising in this publication, I need you to clear with me your hiring practices. Okay? Subsequent to that, the city consolidated their ads into one ad. Okay, so I had the conversation with the attorney of the investigation. I said, yeah, if you want me to go back and do some analysis on the history of our relationship, I would be happy to do that. He said, not necessary. Okay, so if we're going to hang our hat on this issue of was the city's purchasing habits impacted? The city's purchasing habits was impacted. There was multiple ads, and then after Councilmember Gussie said, wait, we're not going to approve your advertising until this non-related issue is resolved to my satisfaction, and the city subsequently consolidated their advertising in that product. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will give Councilwoman Gussie a chance to retort if you so desire, or...
No, thank you.
Okay, all right. So there is a motion and a second on the table. There is still time for discussion. I would like to add that, Mr. Barrow, you bring up an interesting point about the on whether the validity of the complaint, should have progressed or not. Clearly, I think that if you, being in a media agency, I think you've seen that, on our council agenda items that we have had e-sessions where we're working on additional clarifications through our city code of the ethics policy. While we haven't gotten to that point yet, I think there was probably some misunderstanding. Council, it's my belief that as one of the members of the founding and writing of this ethics code, that I think that when you are looking at the way a code is written, you have to look for legislative intent. And the reality is that when you look at the definitions that are provided in the code, that when we talked about third parties or we talked about the citizenry, one of the things that we did as members of this subcommittee, you have to remember that this subcommittee goes back, 7 years now? Maybe 7.5. We spent a year on this. We met in at least 10 to 15 different meetings, subsequently taking several hours. In those hours, we tried to compose things from other ethics codes that were out there around the country, around the state of Arizona. We then took real world scenarios, ran them through the process, tried to see what fit and what didn't. We had members of the public, both of the committees there and the general public, and we took all of that all that information into what was the creation of the ethics code. And when we did that, the purpose and the legislative intent is that currently citizens have a recall ability and they have the voting box or the ballot box to say, hey, council member, I disagree with the way that you are doing things. We gave them a 0.5, so in other words, 2.5, right, of other things, and that was this ethics code. But the ethics code was based primarily on the reason and rationale by which council members did not have an ability to resolve concerns. Now that sounds easy enough, right? But there's oftentimes things that are said in public. There's oftentimes things where people say something they didn't mean, something came out wrong, something's misquoted. And so the idea is that there's an informal process and a formal process by which those council members can resolve concerns before it gets into a much higher level blown up issue. And so I think where I take issue with this is that when we go back and we look at the legislative intent here, this was never intended for third parties to be able to bring these types of things here, because there's no way in which, and I'm not stating that this is occurring here, but there's no way for us to sit as judges when this can be a political complaint. This can be something that's valid or invalid, right? And so at the end of the day, I would like to hear council's discussion on this item as we get to the motion, because I think it pertains directly to it, whether we should be giving staff direction on that clarity, because to Mr. Bartle's point, should we have even gotten to this point if it had gone back to him in the beginning saying this is not accepted? And I think that clearly the legislative intent behind the filing of this was for council members to resolve this issue. Now, whether a council member picks up that issue out of a citizen and takes it and files an ethics complaint, then so be it. But that's not what transpired in this case. Now, I'm not saying that we should go backwards on it, because again, we're in the middle of this and here we are. But I think that we are both trying to keep precedent and not establish new precedent, but yet we need to make sure that we are giving staff that clear direction as to moving forward, that what was that legislative intent and what is that clarity. So again, I propose that to you, council, but it's up to you on how you want to proceed with it. I see Councilmember Vitiello's hand, and I see Vice Mayor Smith's hand. Excuse me, Councilmember Vitiello.
Vice Mayor, you first.
Oh, am I still live?
You are.
Yes. Okay, couple points. So regarding the third party, I definitely believe that the intent was for this to be a city council member to city council member, because of all the issues that happened prior to the ethics code being in place. So I definitely support that and want to direct city staff to continue to follow in that direction, as I believe that the legislation was written to be council member to council member. And another point of reference, part of the ethics code is to handle any types of grievances such as this with person-to-person contact, if at all possible. I am a big proponent of picking up the phone, which all indications in this case doesn't sound like it happened. Picking up the phone and talking to the person, whether it be Councilwoman Gussie picking up the phone, whether it be Scott Bartle picking up the phone. I am a big proponent of that. I have this theory established that you can't sit across from somebody and have coffee and have the same anger issues that you have when you're sitting at a typewriter. So I'd like to encourage, as we move forward with all of our behaviors and work ethics in the future, to always encourage the idea of picking up the phone, having a face-to-face, and resolving issues that way, because I'm a believer that most issues can be resolved that way. I'd also like to go back to the discussion regarding the revenue, because I think that is my biggest concern. I don't ever want to be a prohibitor of a business making money and bringing in revenue, and that's a huge concern for me. And I know that Mr. Bartle came up and really, truly, and I believe in his heart, he believes that Councilwoman Gussie did interfere with his ability to make revenue. However, in reading the report, the interviewer did talk with, I believe, several staff members. I believe he quotes Jennifer Brown in indicating that there was a new direction for marketing where they felt they were going to get a bigger bang for their buck by doing social media on Facebook, newsletters within the city, and on their website. And I believe they have the steps to prove that they're getting really great interaction that way, and they're saving the city money by having a lot of their marketing done that way. So those facts are in the document, and I think that it definitely supports why all of the media and their revenues have gone down a bit in regards to this new direction that the city has for marketing. So I just want to bring that point out because I think it's important for the public to know that point as well, that the city actually had a new strategy, and it just coincided with this disagreement between these two members of our community. So again, I would like to direct city staff to go back to what I believe the intent to be, which is council member to council member. And that's the end of what I need to share there, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Vitiello.
Yes, I agree with what Nancy has to say. And again, process is the most important thing here. And I struggled over this speaking with the city attorney about this, and struggled with the fact that the process was not followed. And although the exoneration was there, I struggle with even starting to read it because, again, the process, to me, I feel was not followed. And that's why I asked those questions to Mr. Bartle, because process is very important in legislating. And you brought it up yourself, Mayor, that the intent was not there for this to be anybody coming after us. At any given time, this could be a free-for-all for anybody to come against any one of us council members for whatever reasoning they choose to during an election year. And that really worries me. We've had some of those incidences in the past in bigger elections, and it really frustrates me that something can't be brought up at the given point in time. I think this might have been, would it have made a difference if it was brought up a year and a half ago? That was a decision of the complainants, to wait a year and a half during an election season. He said it himself. And I fear the fact that I, in the future, if I choose to run again, that I'm going to have to defend myself or any one of us other council members who choose to run, that we are going to have an issues on every single one of us of somebody who doesn't like me or her or she. And that really scares me. So the process has to be very cut and clear and dry. And I don't feel today that the process was completely run the right way. But we are here today. I have to agree with with Vice Mayor on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Vitiello. Councilmember Wade, did you have something?
Well, I addressed the motion and put the motion on the floor, so obviously I have some concerns that the process itself wasn't followed correctly and that there was exoneration. When you take into consideration how long it took to bring this issue to the table, what was the concern about the loss of revenue that has not actually been substantiated. The fact that there are personality issues, which is why I asked how long your relationship was and what happened in the relationship. Consider that an issue of personalities for whatever purpose that might be. But I agree with both my fellow colleagues that the legislative purpose of the code was not followed. That the time frame, the statute of limitations, if you will, as there wasn't a statute of limitations, but the time frame exceeded what was laid out in the code, and the purpose for which the code was established, that being to resolve issues between council members. None of these things were followed through. So even given the idea or the thought or buying into the thought that there might be bad blood or there might be issues of personalities and what have you, that's understandable and would be, it is understandable. But if the process isn't followed, that doesn't even matter. Just as though the time frame for filing or if there's additional information, it doesn't matter because it doesn't follow the process. And so that's why I felt comfortable enough to be able to submit the motion to move forward, because I don't feel like the process was followed, and I believe that when it's all said and done, the exoneration will be in place.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak in the discussion portion of this? If not, we have a motion on the floor. Hearing no one, I'll move to a vote then. We have a motion and a second. Also, staff, you have direction from council, I believe, this time, but we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. Of the motion? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries with it being in an exoneration at this time based on the report. So, staff, you have your direction. And then that takes us to item 7.2, which we don't have to table. It's just buried. It doesn't exist because there's no further portion of that. Yes, before we move on.
Would you accept a closing remark? It will be very brief.
Sure.
Mr. Bartle, please accept my apology if you felt offended or if you felt disrespected by my tone. I'm a very direct individual. I work with veterans every day, and we are very blunt. You could ask a group of veterans and they will tell you we are very blunt. And this is possibly something that you're not accustomed to. Please accept this council's due diligence in following through your complaint. Please accept and respect the process. Please don't see this as acceptance as a get out of jail free. I hope that someday we can resolve our differences, but that day is obviously not today. Thank you.
Okay. With that concludes our council meeting. There's no further executive session and no further business on the agenda. So with that, can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion at this time? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, and that we will stand adjourned for 2 weeks. We'll reconvene in the first week of June.